welcome everyone to the future of storytelling and the big brunch event. I have a hot chocolate, that'll be my brunch. Today we're going to talk about presenting work online and in virtual reality. Come on in, we're just starting to chat. And in the room we have Violeta Ayala, who is the creator of Prison X, which is an amazing virtual reality animation that's been doing the rounds of the big film festivals in the world. Premiere at Sundance, from Sundance Film Festival to Anywhere Festival. And then off, are we allowed to talk about what's happening next?
Not yet.
Okay. Other exciting places soon.
Yeah, maybe French and Austrian.
Good hints, good hints.
Italian, okay.
And joining us from around the world, we have Siobhan O'loughlin and Dierdre V, Lyons. Can you say hi? And hopefully you'll pop up on the screen when you say hi.
Hello, hello.
There's Dierdre.
Hi, everyone.
There's a Siobhan. Fantastic. Briefly about them is, Siobhan is an immersive creator that is kind of gone to doing shows on Zoom and done that transition wonderfully well. She did a show called Broken Bone Bathtub, which was touring the bathtubs of the world and presenting work. It was an amazing award-winning show, and then she's gone on to do a whole series of work under the banner Please Don't Touch the Artist, which is amazing work, which she'll talk more about. And then Dierdre, who's performed in a whole bunch of amazing live virtual reality work with the Underpresents, Finding Pandora X, which won the Audience Award at South by Southwest, and won Best Immersive in Venice last year, and has a work at the moment called Welcome to Respite, which is in Tribeca, is that right? Tribeca, excellent, I got it. What I thought we'd do first is just sort of like give everybody a little chance to introduce themselves and talk about their kind of movement towards doing things in the online or virtual space. Given we're in the room with you, you could start off. Just tell us a bit about yourself.
To begin with, I would like to pay my respect to the indigenous people in which land I'm standing on today. They were, are, and forever be the owners of this land.
This where we are, actually, the talk we are happening, it was at the very top of my notes. So my apologies for not starting with that straight away. We are on the people of the Yagara language group. Here we pay respects to the Turrbal and Yagara people, which is the land on which we are speaking. And we pay respects to their elders, past and present, and recognize that sovereignty was never ceded. So with that, then we can continue. Thank you.
And also would like to express my solidarity to the Palestinian people, Free Palestine. My name is Violeta Ayala, and I'm a filmmaker, I'm a storyteller, and I use everything to tell stories. So the transition, I think that I will always tell stories, no matter how, no matter what, with the images, with the words, with collages, with painting, with cameras. So I always will use, for me, virtual reality, augmented reality, a film camera, they're all tools. They're all tools to achieve something that for me means decolonization, representation, and creativity and imagination. So I made 4 or 5 films. My film's been very successful in the festival circuit. I've been in Toronto plenty of times. We won a Walkley Award with The Fight. And so I've been making documentaries, but before that, when I was younger, I did theater. So it was kind of like a normal transition. I don't see like a transition because I am editing a film at the moment, like a flat film, like a traditional flat film.
Yeah, we should call them all flat films from now on. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm editing a flat film at the moment, and like it's been funded by ITVS, Screen Australia, and it's going to do all that. However, I think it has to make sense. For me, Prison X came of the need of trying to tell the story that I couldn't capture with a camera. Because it was this surreal story that had to come, and I needed other tools to tell it. And at the time, the tools were not even there yet. So I imagined these tools. And then my imagination grew wild when I expanded my team, and it became like, I work with a totally different team of people, from fashion designers, to artists, to audio engineers, to animators, creative programmers, and it opened my mind and my mind, and how can I explain it? It made me believe that everything is possible, and I understand where media is going today, and I understand the possibilities, and I understand that technology is here now. And I think that we need to learn to use it. And I think that if we don't want to fall behind in a way, because as I said, I am a storyteller, and I always going to tell stories no matter how, why. If one day I have to, like, I make graffitis, I cut magazines, I don't think I can stop creating. I'm creating things all the time in 3D objects today, in magical voxels. I have a crypto voxel where I'm just playing with this Jaguar evolution idea, and I'm all the time creating. I just can't stop creating. I don't think I would be me if I would stop creating. I really love what I do. So I think that's, for me, it's just a tool again.
Wonderful, thank you. We're going to delve into those things more through the talk. But let's go over to the other side of the world. Siobhan, would you like to tell us about your amazing journey from bathtubs to Zoom and beyond?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Siobhan. I use she, her pronouns. I am presenting to you from Chumash land. And I also would like to express solidarity with people of Palestine and Gaza. And so for me, the long story short, I guess, is that I had a bike accident in Brooklyn in 2014, and I had a cast all the way down to my elbow, and I was borrowing friends' bathtubs because I didn't have a bathtub of my own. I only had a shower, and I didn't want to ruin my cast. So as I was sort of ruminating on this experience, I ended up kind of accidentally creating an immersive performance piece that was in a bathroom from the bathtub for an audience of however many people can fit. And so what would happen is I would tell you about what happened to me, and I would ask you about things that you've been through, and all the while you're physically actually giving me a bath. So for years, I did not wash my own hair. And from that experience, what I really, thanks, Tim, what I really discovered that I appreciated about immersive work for me was creating a space for people to interact really intimately. And part of that is the site-specific nature of it. Part of it is my vulnerable nature of it. And I toured this project for almost 6 years. And I'm currently editing a documentary about the final tour and the last 35 shows of this piece that I did throughout the United States. So that was my project that then got super duper canceled in 2020. And I panicked because I have some neuroses. And I thought, I have to figure something out. I have to pivot because I'm a scrappy, independent artist. And if I don't make things, then I'll be forgotten and I won't be able to compete. I won't be able to keep up. I'm absolutely brainwashed by the capitalist machine. And so I started throwing works up on Zoom and trying to experiment with what I had sort of created, using bathtub as the foundation for the thesis of I think what I do as a creator. So that's me. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Yes, fascinating. Again, many more things to delve into. And Dierdre.
Hello, friends. Hi. I'm Dierdre V. Lyons, and I am in Los Angeles, California. I feel all the things that that were said regarding the native people of our land that we often don't honor, and I respect those over in Palestine trying to live their lives. And so just, of course, all of that. And well, I'm an actor in LA, which is kind of like, like one of a gazillion. And it's sort of like crazy trying to get through gatekeepers here in Los Angeles with the amount of actors there are. There's just a lot. So since 2016, I'd been fortunate enough to start working steadily with a lot of the major immersive theater companies in Los Angeles. I'd worked with JFI Productions, Speakeasy Society, Spy Brunch, and some other really awesome ones. And it was the end of October 2019. I can't even believe it wasn't even that long ago. And there wasn't even any whispers of this mysterious illness, and everything was just really calm and great. And I just finished doing House of Creep with JFI Productions. And well, as always happens, I get a bit of the blues as I mourn the closing of a show, and I'm a bit anxious as I wonder if anything would happen next. So I started putting my feelers out. I was cast in 2 shows simultaneously. One was Tyra Banks's opus Model Land, and the other was this crazy thing called The Underpresents. And I was like, I don't even know what this is, but it was devised theater in virtual reality, and it was crazy. I was doing Model Land, I was doing The Underpresents. I brought a headset. I now knew what it was. I was using controllers, and then the pandemic hit and shut everything down. And Model Land fired everyone like 2 days later. So luckily, I also been working in VR with The Underpresents, and the company that created that was Tender Claws, and they decided that they wanted to help the actors, and they created a theater in The Underpresents called the Decameron. They put on The Tempest, which I was also in, and that won at Raindance Best Immersive Experience. I then put out some feelers for another VR theater company called Finding Pandora X, and they cast me as one of the principals in the show. I play Corey, the Greek chorus leader. And it was from Finding Pandora X that I learned that you could actually produce live theater in VR without having to build your own platform, because it was done all on VR chat. And I got together with a friend who I knew from LA, but was also a big fan of The Underpresents, and somebody else who was, a big fan of The Underpresents, who happened to be in South Dakota, and my husband, and we all came together. We put on Para for the Halloween as sort of a proof of concept, and it went well. So we did Krampusnacht for December, which was a finalist in the PGA Innovation Award. And then we are now doing Welcome to Respite, which will be in the Tribeca Film Festival next month. So it's all been like really fast.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dierdre, and welcome everybody, and welcome everyone in the room. What I'd like to kind of delve into a little bit more first up is audiences and audience relationships, because I think this is one of the things that really changes a lot. In that we're used to sitting down watching film, we kind of know what that is as an audience, and immersive work kind of pushes that in some degree, but also this sort of movement from like passive to active audience, and finding those audiences is also like a different kind of journey. Like, where are these people in what worlds? So I know you're sort of looking into different worlds, but you're also on the sort of film circuit. So how do you find this sort of different way of imagining audiences when you're moving into a different medium, a different story?
It's interesting. As a creator, I don't think much about audiences in that way, because as you said before, my work has been in Amazon Prime, PBS. It's always been like seen by a lot of people. So I live of this, like I live the funding. I produce all my work. I'm independent since day one. I never worked for anybody else. That's why I also, with Prison X, I had the chance to work with other VR creators. And I said, no, it doesn't make sense to me, because I'm not going to learn anything, and I want to do it myself. I want to understand this the way that it makes sense. We have. Imagine your first VR project, premiere in Sundance. Premiere really? Like, of course it happened, and the reviews were brilliant. Like, I never imagined having Like it's been called the best of Sundance this year by Non-Proscenium, by like came by and all these press that were really young and new to me. Like it wasn't the varieties and the ones that I was used to, but it was a totally different arena. As we dive into this, we will be finding the audiences. I think that I'm looking into this world, as I said. I believe a lot in decentralization. I believe in making, I don't want to repeat the patterns of capitalism and decentralization. I think that we're facing a techno-authoritarian future that wants to standardize us all. I am against that. So I believe in decentralization so deeply that I am creating inside crypto voxels. I am creating a way, I'm trying to find a way where you can go inside and then pay with crypto coins and then being able to experience this. But I think it's a long, not so long, but it's a road to that. And finding those audiences. We have to remember also that more people are inside this tech wave than not, because we tend to focus so much about in countries like Australia, where the majority of the people are old. But we forget about countries like all Latin America, where everybody's young, and China and Asia, and a lot of countries where a lot of young people are so into technology that you wouldn't believe this is very easy and this is native to them. More people are native to this technology that they're not native to this technology. And I think this is the time that for me is wonderful because it's about the experimentation time. We have, I feel like someone who said to you, I am an expert in VR, you know, is bullshitting. Nobody can be an expert with few years in the back. I think that this is the time where is an invitation to experiment. I think that VR and AR are also related. I think all of these technologies are related. I don't see VR and AR as two separate enemies. You know what I mean? Like they're related because now you can be able to do maybe a scene you'll be able to see in my hand with these the new glasses that just came from Snapchat. Yeah. So this is the thing that we need to be really open. Like I don't think that you can say I'm a specialist on this. I think we are all experimenting, and this experimentation, this journey is what it matters to me at this moment, because I am really enjoying to be able to create. I'm creating things like shoes and bats and funny things like that, bathtubs, with my finger on my phone, and this can be 3D printed. This is quite amazing that we didn't imagine that 5 years ago. So I think that for me, the fact that today we can do all of these things is quite amazing. And I think it's important as we're facing a future with augmented reality that we don't let just propaganda follow us all over, that we create art. And this is art that questions the societies we live in, art that is creative and beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exciting to imagine that we, as artists, are exploring all sorts of new platforms, and audiences are exploring these new platforms, and everybody's new. Nobody's quite sure like what everything means. So there's a lot of amazing possibilities. There's a few other perspectives I'm going. Maybe we'll keep going in this little order that we're ended up in. So, Siobhan, I know that you created a really audio. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't hear you, love.
Hold it like this. They're interfering with each other. Okay. Yeah. If I hold it like this. But are you hearing me now?
I'm hearing him. I'm hearing him softly. Would you say that's accurate, Dierdre?
Softly.
Yeah, it's definitely better now. Yeah,
Okay. What about if we just use that one mic? We move it between us. Okay. We'll like, yeah, great. It's like a little tiny microphone. How about this? Is this working?
Yep, it's
Okay.
appropriate. I like it.
Okay, good. Good. We're going with this. So yeah, yeah, speaking of like exploring new, finding yourself in a new space and developing a new relationship with an audience. Yeah, please speak to that, because you have a real special relationship with your audience, I think.
Thank you. Yes, I do. So when I did my first show on Zoom, I'm an okay Zoomer. Everyone has opinions about it. I'm fine with it. Zoom fatigue, I can't help you. I'm on Zoom. And so the first show I did on Zoom, I literally posted that I was doing it again, so that people would think of me as someone who does things, not because I actually had any ideas or that I knew what I was going to do. So when 27 people showed up in my waiting room, I was terrified, and I ended up just reading, from my journal out loud. And weirdly, people were really into it. And I was like, okay, well, I can do this again if y'all, want to come back. And so I started just using my social media platforms to post Zoom links, as well as my mailing list from Broken Bone Bathtub, and people from all over the world. I have a few Australian regulars actually who show up every couple of months. People just continued to show up. And what I found right away is that one of the things that I would do when people when people come into my Zoom room is that I'm already there on screen and I'm welcoming each person individually, saying their name, commenting on their clothes or whatever's happening in their square, and they're like miming to me, in that space. And I also decided very early on, by like maybe the third performance, that we would not ever close the Zoom room. So when the show was over, I put my little parasol back over the camera and kind of settle myself, and my team sort of, does the kind of credits and the links to follow me and support my Patreon. And then afterwards I come back and talk to people and hang out. And then over the course of the evening, people are cooking, people are, testing makeup products they just bought. They're just like hanging out. And so we found that these friendships began to bond and materialize from the minute the pre-show starts, and then carrying on into the night. And early on in the pandemic, we would stay up all night, so 4 a.m., whatever. Like, people didn't know what to do, so they were like, I guess I'll just talk to this guy from Atlanta and this woman from San Francisco, and I don't know what's going on. So and now at this point, we have our own Please Don't Touch Slack. It's called Friends and Lovers, the PDT Friends and Lovers. And on this Slack channel, we talk about mental health. We share memes that make us laugh. We talk about our real life problems. Two of our audience members actually just did a Zoom last week to practice for job interviews, because they're both in an interview process. And so my audience does not just come to see me. They actually come to see each other. And we facilitate those means through the chat, through the way that my performances are run, which is a very communal experience, so that signing on to my Zoom is really about participating in community as an audience member.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting shift in imagination around what a performer can be, in that it can be a catalyst for a community, and can kind of then continue to sort of host that and be a part of that. I also understand that the Underpresents ended up with quite a community of people, Dierdre.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk a little bit more about how that community developed?
Yeah, just quickly, to add to that sense of community that Siobhan was talking about, in what was kind of unexpected was how a audience started, the audience, for lack of the better word, do we call them gamers? I don't know what we call them, because it's all like an intersection of gaming and theater and who knows what it is, but it's all developing. And a lot of them started a Discord channel where they would go on and they would talk to each other, and they would give actor alerts and say, oh my God, so-and-so is on the stage right now, go see them. And everybody would like scramble to try to get to that actor and see them if they could get into the right instance. And you could also do like things like, I just did a bit, and then you would go onto the Discord and see what your audience said about it. Like, did they like it? Did they not like it? Did it hit? Did they get the joke? Or was it not working at all? And so there was this really fun feedback that you could create like with your show or your performances, as like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to do that again because that didn't work, or you just keep building upon what is working. So that was really fun, and the community was really beautiful, and they're still going strong.
Yeah, that's the feedback is quite amazing as well. It's quite a different experience to where if you've got that catalyst for a community where you can then get this sort of immediate feedback, which is often really hard to get with theatre. I just also did a Zoom and virtual reality at the same time performance, and the ability just to record that and record the faces of all of the audiences. And look back and being like, oh yeah, okay, this person and that person got that joke. This person doesn't know what's going on. That sort of thing is really new. So we have this sort of new relationship in that sense. And it also makes me think, I guess, about agency as well, in terms of that being a really different thing to sort of cater for, in that we're sort of entering less of a presentation, more of a collaboration with an audience. Would you like to speak on collaboration and agency a bit? Here's your
my microphone.
Mic.
It's interesting because in Prison X, you play a character. And in this sense, when I had to write about the audience, I made sure that I write that I wasn't making this, I want to do a representation of where I come from. I'm Quechua. I'm an indigenous woman from Bolivia, and my people haven't been represented in this way or on a screen much. Like, they always represent us with a Western view of like our poor people, because you see a woman with llamas and a big aguayo and you assume that she's poor because that's the presentation that they done to you. You don't really even know that that woman doesn't have to pay for anything. No services, like has electricity, and each llama costs a lots of money. So I think that there is a misconception of that relationship of people. So for me, it was very important to do something that will represent something that my camera couldn't capture, but also a very actual problem that means with incarceration and the war on drugs in Bolivia, and we are the third cocaine producing in the world. So for me, it was more interesting to play with a lot of theater concepts that I knew, that I understood very well, that to say, well, I don't believe in empathy and virtual reality, honestly. But I think that if we play with the fact that they say we use theater, and I say, can you please be an actor? And can you please play this actor? And can you please put on this mask? I felt like it came first in the beginning with the fact that I didn't know if people will know how to use this. So I will even teach them to use the controllers to move and give them you're gonna play a character. And also it was, for me, the moment that I believed in virtual reality was the moment that I seen Tilt Brush. Because as I say, I am a creator, I create things. I'm not a performer, I can perform, but I'm not a performer, I'm a creator. So the fact that I could just go inside and create the world that I wanted to create, the way that I wanted to create with these tools was amazing. And that's when I started believing in this. So then I realized that you needed to understand and you needed to play with, what should I make something that I can make in real life? It's boring. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't want to make that. I wanted to make something that I couldn't make it. So I started playing with scale. Like in real life, I can ask you to play a performer, of course. And so in Prison X, a lot of it, like some of it is an open world and it's your agency. Some of it is not an open world, and I guide you to a point. As we progress on Prison X, it will be really an open world and each person will have a different experience. We're also playing a lot with artificial intelligence, and I decided to give artificial intelligence this time to the Jaguars because I think they're smarter than us. And the fact that I could play with these multi-layer stories, and I didn't have to be so beginning, middle, and end, because I like it or no, I come from a colonized place. And the stories being beginning, middle, and end. But the fact that I had to create everything from zero, I had nothing. absolutely nothing. And I had to create everything. Gave me the chance to say, I have dyspraxia, very severe. I talk about 100 things at the same time. I feel like stories in so many layers. You know, this time I could do it. This time I could make something that was about characters, fashion, imagination, creativity, the war on drugs, social problems, embodiment, and the jaguars. That I love jaguars and the environmental issues that we live in. And I could mix everything and make sense in my own way and put the audience in my own world. I think that was fabulous. And the fact that people seen it, and people from Peru and from Colombia came and told us, look, I saw my friend there. I promised, look, did you interview my friend? Did you even meet my friend? That's why you draw my friend? I'm like, no, he wasn't your friend. Like my brother had people coming to tell him so many times about these stories that they felt. So for me, that was wonderful, making people that we could recognize on them and make them with a lot of, like, they're not very poor or not very nice, you know what I mean? Like Nuna is a bit mean, and no one is so perfect. And I think that lack of perfection is what it makes you like them. And the fact that this story keeps growing, because we're going to get to the point where if the audience is not very, if the audience goes around and around and around, we're going to make the world a bit easier. And if the audience can explore more, we're going to allow them to explore more. So each person will have their own experience. And that's for me quite wonderful. And yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I find, yeah, that's, yeah, the way in which you sort of will be evolving it, quite fascinating. And also when you're in virtual reality, you really do feel like you've met somebody in a way that you don't otherwise, even if it's very scripted. Even if it's like, cool, they're doing their bit now, but you're like there with them and you can kind of move around them. And that's an amazing experience. That's not us. Also, the fact that you're bringing in this sort of artificial intelligence into that world is like another level of like collaboration, and that now you're co-creating that space with an intelligence that is not human that we would have made. So that I think that'll be fun to see where that moves. To keep on the agency thing, I'm going to jump over to Siobhan to talk about the Zoom interactivity and what you get people to do and how they participate in your stories.
Yes, thank you. So in the world of the OK Zoomer, I've certainly, coming from a theater practice as well, I've attended many digital theater performances online that I absolutely hated. And I realized that what I hated about them was the absolute lack of urgency to any of the experience whatsoever. And right away from performing with my journal entry, I knew that people, the more vulnerable I am, as per being naked in a bathtub for nearly 6 years, it really helps to get people to open up. They're like, well, okay, you look kind of like a pathetic, wet dog, so I'll tell you my life story, whatever. And I knew that obviously we learned to mute everyone, right? Like Dierdre's muted right now, I'll mute when she speaks, right? There's a sort of conduct you have to develop. But we strongly encourage everyone who comes to PDT to have their cameras on, because in doing so, they can at least physically engage. So from the activist world of Occupy Wall Street, when someone is talking and you don't interrupt them, you use hand signals to justify your agreement or discordance with what they're saying, and we call these up twinkles. So I will often prompt my audience with questions about my narrative and saying like, okay, do you think I should text him? Should I text this guy? What should I do? And they'll give me up twinkles in their squares to say yes, or down twinkles to say, no, forget him, he sucks, right? Whatever the story is. And as I solicit narratives, I look for points of connection as we're going through whatever my plot is. So for instance, I might be talking about, for this scenario of, I don't know, flirting, whatever it is. I'm like, hey, do you know how I feel? I'm really insecure. Have you ever been so insecure about something that you're maybe just too paralyzed to do anything? And then people will put their hands up, like I certainly have. And my joker, my host of the Zoom, will unmute them, and then I'll talk and I'll say, you know, hey Tim, what happened to you? What made you scared, right? And Tim will share, and the chat will scroll. So if you happen to be afraid or undesirous of showing your face in my space, then the chat is a great place for you to still be very actively engaged. So there's a whole other world happening in the chat that I simply cannot keep up with, in which people are making jokes, talking to each other, sharing solidarity with someone who's opening up in a really vulnerable way. We also use the chat to, for instance, if you're going to play a role. So in this story of the man that I sent DMs to on Zoom, sometimes people have to play him, and we'll DM you the script. And so then when you step in, we'll give you a little bit of instructions, and you've got a little private message for the text to improvise, you know, as this character, as it were. We've also used the poll function a lot of times for comedic potential, but trying to find constant ways to keep the audience very present and engaged. We even do themes. So I have a road trip Bruce Springsteen performance, and in the Slack and through emails, it was sent a guide to Bruce Springsteen fashion was sent out to everyone, so that we could all come with our best boss looks from different eras of, you know, his career. And it's great because when people file in, I of course recognize their square, and the chat, they recognize each other in the chat. And so within these realms, we've made it our real a priority to incentivize the audience to pay attention. So you can, you know, eat your pasta, you can fold laundry, but I still actually really want you present with me. And if I'm doing a basically D-level film that you're not interacting with at all, there's no reason to join my Zoom experience. So in this world, you are not only relating to me personally, but finding a way for other folks to learn about and relate to you, and really maximizing that space. We've also found that the gallery mode is really good for comedy, right? Being able to see each other laugh and share that space together, and how visually we share space, even if we have to be on mute, and how the chat is a place for my beloved introverts. We do have one human being who is called Jack, who has attended all 78 performances and has never ever put their camera on. And you know, we love Jack for who Jack is. We do not know where Jack is. We do not know any of Jack's story. But Jack shows up to PDT, and you should see the chat. The chat adores Jack. When Jack joins the Zoom, they are met with lots of love and care. And so I think, creating that space where we are fully present together has been a joyful journey of prioritization for me.
Yeah, wonderful. What sort of stands out to me in that is the levels of participation, in that there's like many ways of engaging. Also that in order to generate aliveness, participation becomes really important, so that you differentiate yourself from a pre-recording. In order for everyone to know this is actually happening now, you kind of need to engage some level of interactivity, so that everybody like believes that this is actually really happening. So you demand a level of participation in order to do something live, but not everybody is comfortable with like the full level of speaking and acting and playing a part. So there's a sort of design factor in terms of, okay, what level of interactivity should I or can I have, or do I want my audience to have? I know, Dierdre, your latest work has 2 levels of ways of participating, in terms of you're asking for agency in 2 different ways.
Yeah, it's interesting what Siobhan says about greeting each square and saying hello to each person, and there's the feeling of being seen, and that is so important to an audience, that there's this 2-way exchange of community and communication. In the newest show that we're putting together, we give our main sort of role to Alex, who plays the main character in Welcome to Respite, and they're an audience member, and they're guided by the two parents. But really, Alex is the star of the show. And then we have 9 altar places where we can have people come in and see the show in an invisible avatar. So they can move around the house, they can go where they want to, they can even stand exactly where Alex is and look up at the parents and see the point of view that this particular audience member gets, that they can also get by standing in the same exact spot. And you can't do that in real life, because you have presence, but you can in VR because you can be invisible. And with our altar track, we also give other things that they can do and see that Alex doesn't. But it is a little more passive. They're asked not to talk during the show, whereas Alex, we encourage him to, or her, or they, whoever it may be, to interact and participate. I do feel like with VR, there's just such an immense opportunity with the immersive feel of being surrounded by this crazy world that you can create, and allowing immersive theater to sort of evolve in this space, I think, is really exciting, and that's where we've been taking it. Although with VR, I've also seen theater where the audience is asked to just watch it in a no proscenium form, and take away that agency and sort of let them be passive and watch it. What we've been exploring is immersive theater. What I explored with the Underpresents is, the give and take of agency. So when would my character lead the story, and when would I allow the audience to take over, or the players to take over and take us on adventures? And I'd go back and forth between the two, and it was a lot of fun doing both. So exploring all of that right now is just where we're at with this new platform.
There was a great moment I think my favorite moment in Welcome to Respite was I was being Alex, the little kid, and I was just given some crayons to play with on the table, but the table was like up really high and the crayons were big, and you were playing the mother, just sort of like asking about my day, like, how it had been at school, or just doing very like mum chat while I was trying to draw with this crayon. And it really did, it worked. I was like, I'm 8 years old again. and my agency wasn't like, you must do this to progress the story type agency that a lot of, like games would ask you to do, choose option A or choose option A or B. Like the agency wasn't didn't matter to the story, but it gave me another access to the world that was really like, it got me in there. Similarly, we played with chalk in Prison X as well, which just helps you, gives you that sort of action that kind of binds you to the place a little more. The other thing I think I'd like to maybe segue across to now, because I also know that in virtual worlds, particularly live virtual worlds, there are technical limitations on how many people you can have interacting to what degree. So I know it's possibly a factor in how many audience members you have in Welcome to Respite, in terms of like what kind of experience you can deliver. But also the technical process is quite, I guess, different from a traditional theatre production, and it's working with developers rather than filmmakers. So let's just talk a little bit about process and about what changes, what's different in terms of working with the development process, working iteratively, all that sort of thing.
Oof.
I know it's big.
It's a journey. I don't think there is a disjunction between developers and creatives, and there are very few people in the world, more and more now, but they are both. Someone who can be a creative technologist and can understand and develop technology at the same time as art, because it is two sides of like, they're very different, you know what I mean? Like someone who is trying to optimize a computer program or a technology, they don't care about the art. They care about the performance of this. And then we care about, for me, the storytelling, the art, the pace, the transition between one scene to the next scene as a filmmaker, and also like the rigging of characters. To rig characters of tail brush is it's a nightmare. That's why there is not more films made it. And for us to be able to do it, it was a massive step of a lot of people saying no. And I said, well, yes, we can, and we can somehow, and we're gonna find a way. So for me, as a filmmaker, as a creator, it's very important that I don't take no for an answer. And if you're gonna tell me no, I'm not stupid. You're gonna explain me exactly why no, and we're going to find out the solution, how we can do this. And I really think that this is a barrier that you have to cross, that it is difficult. The communication between someone who is like someone who cares about the performance alone and someone who cares about the art and the story and the creativity. And then I think I have learned so much, like for not knowing anything about Unity, Unreal Engine, and rigging and skinning, to understand the whole process. It's a journey, you know what I mean? And I'm proud of it, because I'm proud to understand now something like something so funny like the XYZ of a character, like, because everything in flat is only 2 axes, X and Y, but everything in, I'm a little bit of a nerd too, by the way. I'm a real nerd. So I really, when I said to Dan, well, I didn't care much about technology, he's like, well, you created the Wall of Shame long ago, before anybody did like a web documentary on 3D. I'm like, yeah, you're right. So I'm a nerd. So I really love these problems, these mathematical, and I really like to research and learn. And so this is something that I am also passionate about it. I'm passionate about the story. I'm passionate about, I really love fashion. I really love the meaning of it. For me, art, for the sake of art, is a wank. Sorry for the word, but I think that you have to tell a story. You have to give a message. And the fact that Prison X brought us together, like I had to think outside my box of expertise. And when they said to me, well, this person that I really adore and love is doing this, but I'm like, if I work with that person, is going to do what they've done already in that and that and that project, and I really don't want to. So I had to go outside my own realm and look for, okay, I'm going to find the best fashion designer. I came from Bolivia, and she was in Berlin, so I went and I stalked her because I was traveling, so I could. Yeah. and then I ended up working with my own brother that was here in Sydney when the pandemic hit, and he's an audio engineer doing live audio, working with like Sampa the Great and Genesis Owusu at that level, and everything stopped, and he had no choice but have to come and work with me. And he was also a technologist. He learned, he knew so much about it. So, and he brought that, like, so the programmer will say, well, the audio sounds better here, and he will listen and say, no, but that makes sense. He said, yeah, well, it makes sense, but he had to learn Unity to say, no, it sounds better if I put it here, even though it doesn't come from the mouth. It doesn't logically make sense, but artistically makes sense. So that's how. And then I also work with Dan, that is a designer. And then I really love her art and the way that she expressed herself, but she's never even had a virtual reality headset. So I flew her to Cochabamba, and I said to her, she thought that, I said, would you like to illustrate this? She said, yes. She never imagined that we'll be in VR. She told me after that she was like taking like pills not to throw up, like every day. So she wouldn't disappoint me, to be able to draw for hours and hours and hours. And it was a little bit like this. And then in a lab in Copenhagen, CPH lab, I met a lab. And he was introduced to me as a creative technologist. And I really love the way that he was so, he always said, he never says no, And even when he wants to say no, he kind of pushes harder, but he also is very creative in the way to solve problems. So he doesn't want to show that he knows so much. He doesn't want to prove and make you feel like you're an idiot, but he actually shares his knowledge with you and you work together towards somewhere. Of course, he said to me, it's better if the characters don't move, because he knew what I mean. And then Rolly came and he said, it's very beautiful, but no one moves. It looks like a statue. It's quite boring. I'm like, okay, then we have to make them move. So this is the process, all right? So I was very lucky to find a creative technologist to join us. And he was such a, I don't know how to explain. When we needed hands and we asked somebody else to move, they were like really complicating. And he's like, well, he just went and painted the gloves of Unity or like how genius, how genius to be, rather than rigging and going through a whole process, he just painted them. So this is what I liked it. And I liked it, an organized way of trying to find new ways. So can you imagine, like I assemble a team of people who's never done this. A DJ did the music, a Bolivian DJ that is in Sydney that was locked, that like came back from LA. And he was born in Sydney, whatever. So he had both worlds and he was so young and he's like, well, he's never composed anything. And he ended up composing the music. So I had the freedom to work with these people without the funders asking me anything, because in a documentary, they will challenge me. Oh, they do have experience. And no, this time no one has experience. So I can work with whoever I wanted. And the fact that like even like these audiences are coming to it, like even our crypto boxes, we have 200-300 visitors a day. We are almost at 4,000 visitors, and we had less than a month of this thing. And so I am quite proud of how it's growing and how people feel really attached. But also it's about, indigenous people in Bolivia, Quechua people, we know this is possible and we can do it. And we can tell our own stories in our way. I have a thing that says, until the jaguar tells its own story, the story of the hunt, will always glorify the hunter. So that's what it moves me to understand, to create. And I really think that we need to never forget that experimenting is key to this point. And I think that when you just focus on the industry, they only focus on the result. Let's experiment, let's have fun, let's grow this in a way that it fulfills us as artists, and we will learn into it. Because when you have to solve a problem, you will solve a problem, even if it's a technological problem. I promise you, if you need it, you will solve it, even if you didn't know how to put two cables together. So that's very important. Like the need of solving things will force us to understand what's happening.
It's an exciting perspective on the problems that human encounters when trying to make work. I find that the sort of technological problems, because we're trying to make work in a new space, that we can't predict the issues we're going to have. We can't have this like set script with this like perfect ideal of what it is we're going to end up in the end. And the problems that we encounter are not like they're different to doing a stage show or even an immersive work, where like you can kind of still get to your experience in some way, because I guess the world is known enough. But because you're in this unknown space, the problems that you come across, they change everything. Like they change fundamentally what the world is going to look like, because you can't do this, so you have to do it this different way. So you end up this sort of like journey into the unknown, which is great to hear you so excited about that journey, rather than so ready to take it on, because it is exciting and you end up somewhere you didn't expect. And that's a fun place to be. To the other side of the world, we have some different experiences, I guess, with process and with technology. Let's sort of give everyone a little chance to speak. Siobhan, I guess your process changes quite a lot. I know you have a remote team, so you're kind of creating your show in different places around the world. So this is also a sort of a new and different aspect to how one creates work. Yeah.
Yes. So basically I start with a story that I type into a Google Doc. And at this point in the process, I take requests essentially from the community where they want something. So they've been really wanting an OnlyFans show, and it is called, yep, it is called Lonely Fans. So that piece I wrote last night. And essentially what it is, I start with a story. So in this one, I've created a character that I'm going to play, who is like an influencer kind of e-girl gamer vibe. And what I'll do is I'll write the story and the script, and I'll have a blue section for my TD. And essentially my team right now, I've got 4 people. I've got 2 different jokers. So the term joker comes from the theater of the oppressed world, where the joker is the neutral card in the experience, helping to sort of facilitate everything that's happening in a neutral and non-imposing kind of way. And so my joker hosts the show. So they unmute people when I need someone to be unmuted. They DM scripts. If there were to be a Zoom bomber, they would kick them out. And they essentially help me run the show. Sometimes they have to narrate. So in the Lonely Fans show on Tuesday, they play like my boss, and there's like kind of doing like a voiceover thing. And then I have TDs, and so the TD is also the designer. And so I really leaned into a cinematic experience in the world of Zoom, where I have a horror piece in which the monster, which is my depression, is an audio character, right? And I've learned how to. I have 2 like LED lights for film that I can shine on myself, and I can run. I've learned how to change them on my own. So when my monster is coming towards me, I can brighten my light, and I'm responding to an audio character that my designer has created. So my notes might say something like, Alex, can you create a sexy kind of build-up sound that ends in an explosion? And, I'll just write, and there's question marks, and there's hyperlinks and comments to ideas, or something like a photon blast, like Captain Marvel, and I'll do things like that. And it's great because some of my team is in Chicago, some of them are in New York City, we're kind of all over the place. We've got people, further up in New England, and different folks that I get to collaborate with through our format. And it's been great to kind of think cinematically. I also have different cameras that I use, so I can switch if I want to crawl under the table and climb around down there. I can switch which camera output I'm using, which is it's all very challenging for me. I used to just perform in a bathtub, y'all, and like do nothing but talk. And now I'm like having to do tech, and I'm not very confident, but I pretend like I am. So the collaboration has been really wonderful, and to kind of lean into what I can do on this platform and still create an exciting and surprising experience with the talent of my team.
Wonderful. It's so fun to have that collaboration happening across different skills across the world, and you have a platform that's sort of like built for having lots of different people being able to interact. I know when we've done it, we've had the ability to have, I guess, 6 different countries with performers in different places, and then who actually manages the show can be anywhere in any one of those places, which is really exciting. And Dierdre, I'd like you to maybe talk a bit more. Like you mentioned before about VR chat and how that can work as a platform, and the accessibility of producing work in virtual reality, I think, is really exciting for that process. I know Violeta's show Prison X is PC VR, which means it's a download. So you need to have the sort of the headset and the PC, and download it and load it up and get your Steam VR working. There's a little bit of like process. You kind of got to know what you're doing a little bit to watch that experience. But VR chat's much more, I guess, accessible, and there are like limitations, but there are also like huge advantages to that. So, and of course, you can have performers performing from anywhere in the world as well. So, Dierdre, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Oh yeah, so let me just say, tech will just cure you of any perfectionism you have, because it will crumble it in like a second. I've had to learn that, like, okay, anything can happen at any moment. Like I could fall off my Wi-Fi, or my battery could go dead in my arm. It just lays there, right? So you have to give
your microphone
up.
could stop working all of a sudden.
Oh, did it? Oh no.
No. I'm just saying, my microphone. My one stopped working before.
Yes,
you can
that's
end up
what I'm
using
saying.
this.
Right, exactly. It's a perfect point. I was laughing to myself when that happened. I was like, yeah, those tech for you. That's, you just got to adapt, right? Just got to figure it out and work through it, because you got to finish the show somehow, even if it's just, we're going to take an intermission now. So we do theater in VR chat, which is a nuts platform to use. And we try to create, we have been able to create all of our shows Quest friendly. It is an effort, because they only give you 50 megabytes and it's not a lot. So then you have to think creatively about what you're going to do to make sure that you don't go over those 50 megabytes. But one really super cool thing is, if you have something in the world, you can use it as many times as you want. So we take things and we will repurpose them. So for example, there is a fort in the attic of the parents' house. And for our onboarding section of the show, we have blown it up to super, super big proportions. So you feel like you're just a little toy at the bottom of this thing. So therefore we are using the same thing 2 different ways, not taking up any more space. So creatively thinking like that, of trying to get around the certain limitations that we have using this platform. And we've learned over doing 3 shows. So our first show, we had 5 actors in that, and we had one stage manager, and sometimes 2. And so then the audience to actor ratio is like 1-to-1, and you're like, well, that's not good. And we got a little better for our second show, but for this show, I was like, well, we really what we need to do is have the actors be the stage managers. And since we can change avatars, we can be different characters. So there's only 2 actors and they can run an entire show. And that way, when we have the audience in, there's not a bunch of crew and actors taking up space, computing space in the world, so that you can have more audiences in. So yeah, working around all of those technological things, thinking creatively to get past them, is par for the course. It's the nature of working in this particular environment.
I've certainly heard people, I guess, talk excitedly about the scalability of virtual reality, in terms of, well, we've got this new scalable platform that you're not limited by a venue size. You can have thousands of people watching, but of course it's not actually the case. It is scalable, but the servers are your limitation, I guess, and the computing power is your limitation. So that's the size of your venue in a way. So there is this promise that, yes, we could potentially scale, but at the moment, your limitations on VR Chat, is it 40 or 50 people or something in a room?
Yeah, I think so. We haven't been that brave because we want to be Quest friendly, and plus, onboarding 10 people is going to be kind of crazy, because for a show, for a theater show, you know what you're going to do. You've done it all your life. You get in a car, you drive to a place, you park, you walk in, you give them your ticket, you sit down, right? Easy.
Mm-hmm.
But with VR, everybody's like, you do what? And so you have to all right, you're going to take your headset, you're going to download this program, you're going to friend this particular account by clicking this link, and then you're going to go and you're going to request an invite, and then you're going to get an invite request up in the corner, you're going to click on that. So there is a process of training, teaching, showing the audience how to access the show, which is different than what they're used to.
Yeah, absolutely. Onboarding has a whole stack of challenges, and also interactivity has its own, I guess, limitations in terms of scalability, in terms of how many people you can actually have that live interactive experience, where otherwise it sort of falls back into being presentation.
With our show, Welcome to Respite, it was in real life, and it's a 1-person show, right? So 1 audience member and then the actors. But with VR, because we can do the invisible avatars, now we're able to scale the show much larger than what it was in real life. Plus, we're able to run, 3 teams of actors at this, at essentially the same time. So the scalability is different.
Okay. Yes. That's probably a good way of putting it. Yes. Scalability, it's there. It's just a different kind of scalability. I feel like we should sort of, I guess, talk about these mediums, what's exciting about them, and then sort of look to the future as to being like, okay, what's exciting about the future, and the future of storytelling? What is it?
It's interesting for me because once everything starts working in Prison X, you realize you have a set. And you realize that if you have 2 Rococo suits to do this motion capture, we also do facial capture for some characters, and it's a bit more involved. But then you realize that how Toro or all of these Marvel films are being made by Lupita Nyong'o with these things, and I realized I can make it my own. Yeah. So for me, that was very exciting. And in this case, if I put 2 actors working together and I can place the cameras inside, I can have 8 cameras inside and cut it as a flat film later. So this is also a set. Coming from film, I still go make movies. I still want to make movies. I still like this control of making movies inside. Like, I would love to try to do some theater at some point. I think that will be lots of fun because it's something that I haven't been doing for a very long time and I will enjoy deeply. But at this stage, I still go in this idea of I'm making a film, although Prison X is described as theater. We have 25 different characters and 6 main characters, and now the 25 are moving. A lot of them move like me, my brother, and like the 6 main are different, but then everybody else, they move like me and my brother, and even I am the kid. I told my daughter, move next to me so I can copy her movement, so I can move like a kid. But then you realize that things like, you start realizing that like if they're alone and they're moving, and because you have to put them in a loop, it looks like they're mental patients. So then you have to realize that you have to put them in pairs. So then they look like they're having some sort of interaction. As you say, because you feel so present inside, it is so deeply connecting in that way. So it's exciting that it's also a medium. It's also a tool to create films. You can create any film that you want. Like, I remember I was explaining to some funder to say, I'll put like 4 HD cameras, like how, or 8, how expensive will be? I say, it will cost the same because you just put it in Unity, 1, 2, 3, 4, no, in Real Engine. Like that's what is changing, right? Yes, computing power, that's a nightmare, you know what I mean? It's, but again, like what 2 years ago happened in 1 year, today it's happening in 2 days. You have no idea how much things that you couldn't do before. Like today, you can rig and skin a character. You can make an animation with something like Master Studio Piece without being able to use Blender, perhaps, without being able to do. How difficult was to do animation before? Today, it's not so difficult anymore. First, you have Mixamo for rigging, and then you have like, if you draw a humanoid character, you can put it in a program and does it for you in 2 minutes. And then you can put a motion capture suit and it costs like $3,000 or $4,000 today, still quite expensive, but like $3,000 to something that used to cost $500,000 in the past, like there is a massive difference. It becomes more doable, and you need one and you can play a lot of different characters, and then you can do dialogues. Of course, it's not nice to do a dialogue on your own, but this is what excites me. The possibilities of what's happening, what we can create, our own imagination will be the limit. What scares me is the standardization of everything. When everything is getting standardized, where you think that this is the set it should be. No, I don't want to play on your set. I want to do my own set. I want to create my own way of experimenting and experiencing the world. Perhaps the train in Australia, the metros, are really, really particular. And I haven't seen them in many films, but if you put a train to somebody, make a metro, they're all going to do the American metro. When children, you put them a camera here and they're speaking with American accents, what is telling us? You know, where we failing? We're failing in telling our own stories and trying to, this idea of what's your audience, trying to fit to this audience, I think it's very dangerous also, because I think that our audience want to see themselves in it. They want to hear Australian accents. They want to see our trains. They want to see those trains represented in animation. They want to see our chairs. They want to see the way that we see each other in our own ways. And this is what it creates for me, human connection. And human connection is universal. So the universality is not going and copy the American Disney, or like I remember once saying, if I wanted to make Disney, I'll go and work for Disney. I have the curriculum to do whatever I want in the film industry. I am independent because I do love that independence, because it has given me so much into this, so much understanding and so much power, coming from Bolivia and then living most of my life between Bolivia and Australia has changed the whole spectrum of how I understand the world. And I think that this is so important for us, because here is not an excuse. The only excuse is ourselves and our educational processes that are not allowing us to do this experimentation. Yes, we can fail, but you know, we can also have fun and we can also succeed. If you don't fail, you will never succeed. The same as with macho patterns from the computer. The computer is a macho, is a patriarchal instrument. Is designed by men. It is a square and it's boring, like men will design it. And then they want us to use these things and I really don't understand them. So from that moment, we need to really, as women, we need to work in technology. We need to design our computers. We need to design our processes. And you know, it wasn't a joke for us when me and my brother started doing Unity. He understood really, really easy, because it was created for people like him, for a man. It wasn't created for me. It was a bit harder. I needed a bit more. And then again, when we talk about, oh, you know, filmmakers or technologies, we're gonna give opportunity to women. It's not like abracadabra, tomorrow 100,000 women will come. No, it's not like that. We're coming from a totally different, like, these problems are structural. And I think that I really wish, and I really encourage more women to jump into every side. Look, you're gonna fail. Look, things might not work the way that you think. You're not competing. This is not a career, a competition. Like, let's break patriarchal societies from the beginning. Let's not making everything a competition. Let's talk about collaboration. Let's talk about experimentation, collaboration, and let's break those patterns and let's create things that we will like more. Like, my computer is a mess because that's how I think. I wanted my computer to be a mess. I want things to be able to be more understandable by us. And we can only do these things. So for me, this is very important, to fight against the standardization, to understand what's happening, and to use all of these tools to tell the stories that we want to see and we want to dream. And let's do it. Like, I just think that we're not our only barrier. That's a lie. That's bullshit. I think that we're fighting against a whole massive system. The fact that you all know, but like, I think that like, if we don't do this as a community, in 100 years, we're going to be in the same place and women will still be really far behind. So the only way to do it is for us to say, no, I don't care if you can do this. Well, I can do this. And this is my journey. And my journey is as valid and as important as your journey.
Yeah. We're at this, I guess, this really exciting time where, like, it's new worlds being built. You know, like the virtual, the metaverse is being created right now. And like, who's creating that and how are they creating that is, it's still this battle like you're talking about. It's still this, like, what is that going to look like? You know, like, obviously Facebook are putting, you know, 10,000 engineers working on it at the moment. Epic just got $1 billion to make a metaverse. Yeah, Apple will probably release their, like, headsets next year. Sony will release their second generation headsets next year. So, like, there's this huge sort of wave of force in creating these new worlds, and who's going to have the power in those. At the same time, you've got crypto voxels, and you've got all these other, for those who don't know, there's like cryptocurrency based virtual worlds, of which there are 2 or 3 now, and there's a whole bunch more kind of like being created, which are sort of decentralized virtual worlds. So like where people will gather, how they will gather, what kind of worlds we'll have, what kind of tools we'll have to build those worlds, which is like, fundamental as well, is really like, it's sort of happening now. So sort of the time to get involved is really now. Over to you, Siobhan. The future of storytelling. You've had 2 vastly different experiences, and we're going back to, like, if you imagine the post-COVID world, you'll be able to be both in a bathtub and in Zoom, and and all sorts of other things. How do you see like the next sort of wave of creativity for you?
Yeah, so I'm still going to be doing Please Don't Touch. We've decreased the amount of shows we do a month just because the demand is changing for that. And I'll be going back to a new in-person performance here in Los Angeles in July for an audience of 4 people at a time. But I definitely think that, look, I am an idealistic person, but I am not an optimistic person. So I'll be very honest about that. I don't have a lot of hope for tangible, structural changes post-pandemic. What I do long to see is more prioritization of audience experience in terms of actually what Dierdre said earlier of being seen and hopefully understood. So I think certainly my objective moving forward as a creator is how to create a safe space for audiences to share themselves. So what I've learned is whether I'm in a bathtub or whether I'm on Zoom, my actual special skill is not really my storytelling. I'm a pretty good storyteller, but that's not actually my skill. My skill is creating a space where I get to learn about you. And I think that focusing ourselves as listeners as opposed to tellers is a really important strength that we can practice as we create immersive work, as we create work that focuses on audience over ourselves.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, that is certainly a switch of mind, isn't it? Like, okay, I'm as much or more of a listener than I am a teller. Dierdre.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, you're in the sort of live VR space, and there's I think because there's so much emphasis on social at the moment in VR. There's sort of an interesting space in there for like sort of capturing, I guess, or evolving performances, or what performance might be. So what do you see live being going forward?
I see a bright future, a very bright future. First, I want to just thank you for bringing together 3 amazing women creating in this space, in a space that, often is called to be dominated by men. And I think that, the fact that we're here is a good sign. I also want to, give a shout out to all of the theater makers and the creators out there. Hearkening back to what I was saying about, the schema we have in our brains of like how audiences get to see a theater show. We have a schema in our brains of how you make theater, and it makes sense. You find a space, you create a show, a story either around the space or find a space that fits your story, and you create a theater piece there. It's not that much different in virtual reality. I want to encourage people to come and check it out. There are places you can just go in and make theater without having to build anything, right? So like, let's say you go into alt space and you find a world that seems really cool, and you can start working there and creating things. The world building tools in there are not so hard to use. You could use their world building tools to create your own world within that world. If you have a little bit of Unity, you can upload a set to VR chat and, you know, change out your costume designer for an avatar creator, and then the rest is very similar to theater, to creating theater. I think that there is a lot of opportunity to be mined there and found and discovered. I think that this whole platform, this technology platform, that's adding to our experience as storytellers, because I think we are at our hearts storytellers, and as human beings, the need and the want and to be with, part of, and hearing and listening and participating in story, that it's not as unattainable as it seems. We're sort of at the 20s with film, or the 70s with computers. We're like, this is a really cool tool. What am I going to do with it? Right. So now we have like fast cuts, and we've got, you know, CG and all that stuff in our films. But back in the 20s, it was like, what do you do with it? How long should a film be? I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. Should it be 10 minutes? Yeah. And now, you know, we all sort of stand, okay, so it's about an hour and a half is a movie. And, you know, all of these things are sort of like, we've sort of figured it out, right? Well, virtual reality and all these different tech things that we're exploring, we haven't figured it out, but that's what makes it so rich and such so much its own platform. And I don't think it's going to be like theater, and I don't think it's going to be like film. I think it's going to be its own thing, and it's for us to discover what that might be.
Exciting times. Well, we've got a little bit of time. Do we have any questions from the audience? I think it's probably, yep, we've got someone up the back. Maybe just yell it out and I'll repeat the question. Yeah.
So I know creative design constraints help determine what the work will look like. And I'm wondering about how you integrate the design constraint of making something accessible for an audience, but also sustainable. You know, paying our actors and paying our performers is important. How do those two constraints come into the devising? Are they there at all? Do you design that accessibility?
So how do we design with the technological constraints as well as the like paying actors and the sort of financial constraints, I guess, with producing work?
We're not making it, you know, a ceiling that only, you know, it's $100 a ticket makes the thing work. Like, how do you?
Yeah, how does the economics work is an important question. Yeah, and which brings us into sort of, I guess, funding and the film festival system and that sort of thing as well. So you've got some experience with funding.
Yeah, but that's a little bit, I think I don't depend on that audience ticket, because as a filmmaker, I have always worked with funders, Sundance, and then like ITVS and Amazon Prime, Netflix's, that kind of funding. So it's a very different arena. I think at this moment of experimentation, I think public funding, and it's key, especially in Australia, because we have it and we should take advantage of it, and we should write to those funders, and we should, because they're allowing us to do this experimentation in a sense. So I think it's very important that we also get this with the audience one-to-one. And I think that Dierdre and will speak better than me about it, because I will be. So I think that in Australia, we do have public funding that will allow us. So I pay everybody that works for me. Absolutely everybody that works for me gets paid, and gets paid a good way, in a good way, from actors to technologists to sound designers to fashion designers to everyone, because I believe that that's work, and I'm making this work, and I raise the funding, like not personally me. I think Dan can talk more about that side of the production side than me. I'll talk more of the creative side, but like I've been funding all my work all the time, and I'm independent for a very long time. But I think it's very important that we hear from, because I think that it will be more.
Yeah, we'll pass over to the other side of the world. Just a quick, I guess, note on that is that as well as the sort of like VR animation that Violeta's making, the live VR experiences are appearing in film festivals. So it's actually film festivals that are more leading the way in live VR work rather than arts festivals, even though it's like really theatre, but it's theatre is now in, it's because it's this middle zone. So that's a different landscape to what you're used to in producing theatre and trying to get an audience in. But obviously, Siobhan, you're selling tickets. You're doing your traditional. Yep.
Yeah, I love talking about money because nobody likes to talk about it. And it's dumb because the reality is that this girl lived in Brooklyn for free for 8 months during the pandemic because one of my patrons paid for it. And I just want to be super clear about that. That's not the reality now. I have a studio apartment here in LA and it's much more stressful, but I had support from a patron who had an upstate location that he was living in and let me live in his apartment for 8 months during the pandemic. So I just want to be really clear about that. I live off of Patreon. It's very stressful. People fall off at the top of the month or they come on and you're like, how do I keep them? Do they like me? Are they mad at me? It's a big thing. But so if people who don't know what Patreon is, it's a monthly subscription, essentially. I give little videos and blog posts and links to my digital performances. And so if anyone here supports someone on a platform like Patreon, it just means so much more than I can say. Like having people who give me $5 a month it means so much because it allows me to make work. I do pay my team. My designers who do audio design, they make $20 an hour for their labor and they make $20 an hour for the performance. So we meet an hour before the show. I don't rehearse it otherwise. I wing it. I do a cue to cue an hour before I perform because I can't afford to pay people for a rehearsal. Just can't. And my joker, my Zoom host, they just make $50 flat fee for each performance, which means that I spend more time working on marketing than I do content. Full stop. I don't care if the show is good if no one's coming. I don't care. I need people to come. So that's why I've reduced the performances now because I'm constantly looking at numbers. I'm constantly seeing if it makes any sense to do it at all because I might not be able to afford to because follower of Bernie Sanders that I am, I pay my people. I pay them first. I pay them and maybe sometimes I eat it. So that is an issue. I'll also say that I work freelance as a social media manager. And so I work for a voiceover studio doing that. I mean, I hustle. I am bad at days off. I am bad at relaxing, and I think it's really important to talk about because to be a creator means that you're constantly looking at your numbers and your income streams. And lastly, I'll just say that we have a tiered ticketing system at PDT. So it starts, I just bumped the prices. So now it's going to be $10 starting point, and it used to be $0. It was free until January 1st of 2021. So I had free tickets all of 2020 for my work. And so it starts at friend, and then it's like remote romantic. The highest tier is an online boyfriend. So the online so the online boyfriend pays $35, and you can also give me like a heart emoji, which means that you just give me $5 in addition to your ticket. So I do have patrons who are exclusively online boyfriends, and they're always spending a total of $40 every show. And they help make it possible for the folks who are buying the lower tiered ticket, because I want people who are struggling to be able to access this community. But that often means that I'm the one that's carrying the brunt of it. So it's a constant stressor. And and that's why I'm pivoting again, because I've got to keep figuring out how I can continue to create.
I feel it. I feel your pain. So Dierdre, you've worked, I think, in both like the film festival sort of funding, like for some shows, or like working on that being how things is funded, but also with tickets. And I also know Under Presents was a very interesting experiment in what not to do. Would you like to talk to those? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I can certainly say that it's very hard to be a creator in America. we don't support the arts. We don't really fund it. We don't really do anything there's just not a lot of options for people who are creators in America. So if you do have, funding that you can get through the government, wherever you are, do it, because it's great. Enjoy it and savor it. There are possibilities for like grants and things that, you can look in wider locations, like that isn't just art. You can look in tech now, and you can look at, film, tech, and theater. You can kind of look at all of these three places to try to, find a grant. Because I want to continue paying my rent, I have a day job that I take very seriously, and I do a full-time job along with all of the creative work that I've done. Everything I did with, all of with Tender Claws, with Finding Pandora X, that's all just part-time gigs. And I don't give myself the obligation of having to try to survive on just my creativity. But that's one thing. What I can also offer is that creating in virtual reality and in this virtual reality space is a lot cheaper than creating in real life. You don't have rent. You don't have you don't have permits and insurance. You don't have all these things that you normally would pay. So it's actually been quite reasonable to produce in VR, and we keep our team of really small because of that. We pay people through ticket sales, and with this most recent show, all the producers are the performers in the show, like the world creators and stuff are also the performers. So we don't get one person to do one thing. We're all doing all things all the time. And some of us have specialties, but we're really more of a collective than anything else.
Wonderful. It's an interesting challenge, I think, for us all, and it is a new space to be exploring, I guess. As Anywhere Festival is sort of hosting this talk, and we're hoping to support work locally in Brisbane, but I guess the beauty of VR is that we can collaborate and support work anywhere in the world. We have a couple of headsets, and we're like, let's do things. Let's try things. Let's experiment. Let's sort of find the models that work. It is a very new space, so there's a lot of experimentation to do. So we're excited to do some experiments. So please, get in touch if you're interested. And with that, I think we're pretty much wrapped. That's our time. So we'll leave the Zoom open for people who want to chat in there, and we'll sort of mingle after this. So thank you all for coming. I hope you had a great time. And we'll just sort of sign off the Zoom. So farewell, Dierdre and Siobhan. Wonderful talking with you.
It's been lovely. It's lovely meeting everyone. It's just been a joy.
And we're wrapped. Thank you.